All right, we're live. So today we're going to be discussing a few different topics. We got Albie 13 and Terrence here with us. If you watched, Albie was podcasting with me last week. Terrence, I haven't connected with in a while. How you been and what you been up to?
I have been locked in building, locked in learning all the new cool tools that are accessible to everybody as of this year. And I've been pushing open source projects, contributing to different open source projects across, and building my own SaaS.
Nice. How's all that going?
It's going well. I'm supposed to be launching beta for my SaaS no later than the 21st. And the open source projects that I've made are up. People are contributing to them, and I've pushed quite a bit of code to my lady, which is pretty cool open source project.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the one from Shaw with Eliza OS, right?
Yeah, I noticed what he was doing, and I think it's really important for open source to also have like a representation for the solo dev, the people that are building alone in their basement or in their living room or whatever, because that's not news research. News research is a well-funded, awesome team that pushes their findings out for people free, but they're not the little guy anymore.
Yeah, then there's the rest of us.
Right. So I think that my lady is a good representation of just all of us, like anybody that's just building alone in their room or whatever, to be able to have like some kind of project that represents and speaks for us.
Mm-hmm. So Albie, how you been?
It's been challenging, but I am doing well. I'm also working on my SaaS, so it's it it goes back to that there's no replacement for hard work.
Yeah.
I've definitely been working hard.
Yeah, I'm sure we all stay occupied and busy.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So like if I were to give you a quick from the hip explanation, like the stability in my life has been operating a business for 10 years, now well over 10 years. But this has enabled me to consider the possibility of an additional business.
Mm-hmm.
If you know anything about running a business, it tends to absorb you. You tend to become absorbed by said business.
I totally get that. That's my experience.
Yeah. So, but the thing is that you're not talking to a guy who's only going to run one business.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how do you do that? Well, like Carnegie Hall, you have to practice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning basically a whole new level to be able to run multiple businesses.
Yeah. And you need as much leverage as possible. Learning the skill of how I manage only recently in my business, bringing employees in and now deploying agents, getting that leverage, and also learning how to manage all that by itself is a skill too to learn.
Yeah. I think there's some beautiful discussion that we haven't touched on recently and yet, because as we look toward some of our friends online, they talk about how we're passing this uncanny valley where when we speak to representatives, we're actually talking to AI voices when it comes to customer service, or when someone is doing marketing toward people. What we're seeing is the deployment of AI voice advertising and marketing, like sales. Basically, we're having outgoing sales calls, whether that be solicited or unsolicited.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's both kinds. And so I just think that like the human in us especially because we experience the phone by picking up the phone. We're hearing what sounds like a person talking, and through the magic of our mind, we make it a person that we're talking to, even though we're talking to an AI. So
yeah, there's a little bit of mental gymnastics that you have to kind of use there, huh?
The reason why I talk about that is because in terms of my businesses, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, but the only way I see it going is transitioning to AI staff, employees. It doesn't matter if it's very, very far in the future or whatever. We're clearly in the agentic area, as our wonderful last discussion has clearly shed floodlights on.
Well, that's where we're headed. And now OpenClaw came out early this year. We got Hermes agent out now, and those are starting a whole revolution. And we're probably headed into that area where eventually AI agents will go from just doing tasks into doing full jobs once the whole issue of the continuous learning, memory, and context gets solved. So with that, I was discussing with Terrence a little while ago that between Hermes Agent and OpenClaw, I had deployed 2 OpenClaws when they first came out, and then I deployed 3 Hermes agents when they came out, and eventually I switched one of my OpenClaws to Hermes. Albie, have you tried either of those?
Unfortunately, I'm still quite inexperienced on the recent agent things. I still go on my Anthropic Claude adventures, and recently I've been testing and using and even interacting with to check on agent like things that this Meta AI, the Muse Spark, as you're familiar with.
So Terrence, do you want to kind of fill everyone in on how you are managing agents? I think you got
all right. So I have a full system. I kind of pieced together my own AGI to do exactly what Albie is talking about, to have AI employees. So OpenClaw serves as the head, the CEO. I use another framework called Paperclip AI that I strapped my OpenClaw into as the CEO. And it manages a team of 200 different agents. They have different departments like legal, marketing, sales. There's an engineering department. There's a front end development department and everything. All of these agents are fully rolled, scoped, defined. It knows which agents to assign tasks to and reach out to. And it serves as the CEO layer. Now, originally I was interacting with both OpenClaw and Hermes, because Hermes is also in my Paperclip org, managing a separate team of about 60 different agents, entirely responsible for memory management between all of them, the entire fleet. Eventually, I converted over into just talking to Hermes, because I realized that Hermes could just reach out to OpenClaw in order to get it to reach out on my behalf to the rest of the org/staff. And I mean, those projects vary. It's whatever I really want to throw at it. Obviously, I'm not just running that 24/7, because that would be a huge cost sink. Like if you're running like 200 and something agents all at once, it's gonna eat your wallet, or it's gonna eat your compute power if you have the hardware to run a bunch of local models at that level. And if you do, please contact me, because I definitely have some projects.
But yeah, we're going from being able to just use agents for coding to now running a whole organization.
Exactly. And you can, I mean, you can have them tasked at different things at the same time. So like, for instance, I had one managing basically going through my SaaS and just making refinements, doing like a security assessment. It utilized a Kali MCP server that I have running through a Docker container on my computer in order to use those tools to conduct a security and penetration assessment on my website. Simultaneously, it was also researching marketing proposals to see where we stack up with competition, different avenues we can explore to try to bolster our proposition in the market. Then simultaneously, I also had Hermes managing and writing out the entirety of Brain CTL, which was open source. It's now an open source project because I made it so that way it can strap into every single agent and scrub my my own internal data from it and stuff like that. So anybody can just drop that in, and I hope people do.
I'm going to give it a try, and I haven't had a chance to really do like too much multi-agent orchestration because right now my agents are each doing a completely separate task. But I'm definitely going to check out Paperclip and also check out that the Brain CTL that you made. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit more about Brain CTL?
Right. So basically, Brain CTL, it started off as Hermes managing the memory layer, and I started having it optimize to look for ways to make that memory layer better because just like a SQL database is very basic and minimal. So it just kept building off of that. The way that I did that was I assigned entire teams that were scoped into neuroscience, ML engineering, quantum compute, and there was some other avenue that I explored with it. But regardless, I had them do waves upon waves of research, multi agents, like at least 10 agents each. And every single time they would do a research pass, they generate a report at the end. From that report, they would generate implementation steps to further enhance upon Brain CTL, and then also have more research findings to go and dig into. Um, so I blew through because OpenAI gave me developer credits back in 2022 for security research. I blew through over $2,000 in API credits just having it do waves upon waves of research. And I'll say it was mostly OpenAI models. I'm sure I could have saved money by using local or something like that, but I was using free money, so I just wasn't really even thinking about it.
Sure.
But point is, after that, like I thought about that, and I was like, you know what? It was free money. Let me just give this out for free. Eventually, like that whole memory layer I'm building is going to have like its own custom version that's going to strap into the agent that's running on my SaaS as well.
So you're
So
definitely
it's
a lot more farther along than I am because as far as I got is my individual agents run relatively inexpensive but smart models like open models. And then I have an Opus sub agent built into each one. So at those moments where I need more intelligence, I can just have it bring that in. But it sounds like you're 10 steps beyond where I am already.
I don't know if 10 steps beyond is accurate. More like I was willing to spend more money up front to have like the higher grade
Yeah.
of intelligence. And that's really all it is there's just a cost barrier between us and frontier researchers. That's it. That's the only barrier that exists.
Now, from my experience with OpenClaw and Hermes agent, the OpenClaw gateway to me runs a little bit slow sometimes. I had trouble with that. And that's why I personally am favoring Hermes agent. Now, have you noticed anything like that?
So I have noticed something like that. However, it's very important for the OpenClaw gateway to stay running because I'm not sure about like all the technical specifications for the gateway. I really haven't looked into it that much. I should have before I start speaking about it. But a lot of times I have to have my Hermes agent route through the OpenClaw gateway to access different services or to pipe into different things. Like the Paperclip AI thing I was telling you about was really it only optimized for the OpenClaw gateway to connect to it. So
Mhm.
my solution to that was I just had Hermes also pipe through the OpenClaw gateway, and they both operate through the OpenClaw gateway when they're talking to Paperclip.
Okay. Okay. And does that run pretty efficiently, or how does that work? How does that work out for you?
It runs pretty efficiently every so often. Like if I concurrently give them like a really big task or something, like one of them will freeze up and lock up, and I'll have to like kick them and be like, "Hey, you seem like you've just been thinking for like 15 minutes. What are you
Mhm.
doing?"
I have a
and
weird
then it'll
issue
respond.
where on Hermes agent, anytime I give it something on Telegram, I always see at the top it says typing. Sometimes OpenClaw will start to show that it's typing like right away when I give it an instruction. Other times it'll just hang for several minutes and it might ghost entirely or it might kick in and say typing and come back. It's just some quirky thing that I've come across with that.
So I'm not the best person to talk to about that because I know a lot of people like went crazy over like, oh, I can talk to it through my phone and I can talk to it through Telegram and stuff like that. I immediately cut off its access to Telegram and to my phone. It started the one of the first things it started doing was sending my dad walls of text through iMessage,
Hmm.
and I said, all right, well, I'm gonna limit its abilities to do that. Um, the Telegram thing, I just found there were way too many bugs. And I'm mostly behind my computer screen anyway. So
Okay.
I just don't
Yeah.
really, I don't really think about that as far as like being able to orchestrate them for like while I'm away from my computer or whatever. Like I'll usually just set them at a very, if I know I'm going out, like I'll just set them at a very long task and give them like permission to bypass or whatever. And then
Mhm.
I'll come back and I'll see if they screwed everything up.
Yeah, I have to move around different locations all the time, and it's too complicated to set up Signal, which I would have preferred because it's more secure. But Telegram is pretty straightforward for
I
setting up.
mean, I don't know if I don't. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think you really should worry about like security when it comes to utilizing a messaging app because the whole end result of security is that encryption is a lie, and
Hmm.
any agency that wants information on you, they have access to the endpoint, the cell phone that
Hmm.
you're on, the computer you're on. They don't need to break your encryption. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
I think even at least just to keep unwanted intruders out in general. At the very
Right.
least, Telegram lets you specify in the agent your Telegram ID is the only one that's allowed to communicate with that agent. So at the very least, that would lock out someone who's trying to just co-opt my agent from the outside.
I did try the Telegram craze though a little bit. Like I did get my OpenClaw and my Hermes in a group chat, and I got them talking to each other and stuff like that. I thought it was cool. It just was kind of like more of a novelty thing. Once I realized that I can just have them communicate like through the back end without me really ever having to see that. I could even have them like have their own like little CLI chat room, and I kind of just do everything through terminals at this point. My screen constantly looks like a hacker's paradise. I have like 7 different terminals running at all times.
So, guys, where do we think the future of agents is headed from here on out, from
Well,
where we are, where we started early in the year?
hold on. I like your question about future agents, but if you hold that question, there's a couple
Hmm.
of interesting things that I could
Sure.
mention before we get to the future of AI agents. One of the things that I've been using, or two of the things that I've been using, one of the things that I've been using is Grok 420. This 4.2 Grok is an agent system that uses 4 agents, and I just kind of like explained it right there very briefly. And essentially, so at first I thought it was a toy, and I think that it's not a toy, but I do think that it's very strange and unusual, so to speak. And
Hmm.
so let me just go ahead and tell you a couple of things about it. At least this tells you like what is, if these guys, if you guys are using, OpenClaw and these other things, basically, this is what I'm using at this time, although it's different. But I think that, basically this is great to bring us all together because I'm able to talk to you about my experience with this as you're talking to your experience with the other things. So I think that although this is more simplified and streamlined, these agents they can perform. And the interesting thing is that I've been testing it with coding. And
Hmm.
so we go back to coding because that's what I use Grok for a lot of debug to ask questions about code and all these wonderful things. And then I kind of started escalating it, asking Grok 4.2, okay, can you actually code a solution to this? And
Hmm.
so the downside is that agents have to talk to each other, and this takes time. And so we're back at the time where you look at your watch for a while because there are many minutes that pass while there's deliberation.
Hmm.
If we look at the previous paradigm, it was that reasoning models could have higher and higher amounts of time to think, and they would put more tokens down, they would produce more tokens, and they would have large chains of thought. And I think we touched on this in our space recently
Hmm.
regarding Gemini's incredible chains of I'm saying the paragraphs of reasoning. Um, which I find kind of like super interesting because if we look at other reasoning, we often see it in sentences or very like blurb like representations of paragraphs, not true paragraphs. But if we look at Gemini's reasoning, we see actually what seems to be a usable title or a subtitle, for the paragraph. So it kind of like thinks about, okay, what am I going to write in this chain of thought paragraph before it begins writing the chain of thought paragraph? And of course, we know that it auto-regressively looks back at the heading, the subtitle of the paragraph that it's about to think about. This is all in the reasoning chain of thought, right? So then it writes very coherent, very strong. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to bolster the reasoning. They're trying to have, and so
Hey Albie, just really quick, did you happen to see that that the Grok 4.20 mini models are destroying benchmarks for like every single mini model that's out there? That they're currently like the top dogs in terms of like the minis.
I did not catch that exact aspect, no, but that sounds interesting.
Yeah. You know what else? Those Grok mini agents, I think a feature of those that slip through the cracks is you can give different custom instructions to each sub-agent.
I was just getting there. You kind of jumped the gun on me there.
Oh,
I didn't
sorry.
want to let you get a word in because I wanted to say it. So that's where you guys hadn't covered it. So that was my kind of like my secret ace up my sleeve, but not really a secret. Everyone knows a lot of things, but not everyone knows everything. So the thing about it that you don't know is you have no idea what custom agent I've created. So let me reveal. Finally, now I can lift the little veil off. Here's the cloak. All right. So like I can't test everything, but what I can tell you is what worked interestingly, what was interesting and effective of sort, what was useful to me. So instead of me chasing all this performance of code, for example, instead of me trying to see, oh, does like the Grok 4.20 like does it like do this, that, and the other like extremely well, instead of me trying to check everything like that, instead I went to experimentation in the creative aspect, and I said, what if I create a creative agent and throw it in the mix? And this is what I did, and my findings are that it helped in creativity. But we must realize what I'm doing is I'm doing the work of creating the agent. I have to craft the agent and mix in the ingredients, right? So I'm making the pot, right? I'm doing the witch's brew. I have to put all this stuff in and mix it and then put it into the system. And then I get the creative results and the fruits that come out after. So it's like you still don't get it for free, quote unquote. You're still not getting originating creativity. You're more so like putting a part of you, a piece of you into it. And then the AI is using that, mixing it all together, and you're getting some cool creative stuff coming back out to you. So it's like another version. It's a more permanent version, because like if we can try to equate this in an artistic manner, right? What I'm doing is I'm putting a component into the AI system. I get to put a component in, and it's this creative agent in this case. And what this does is it ensures that my Grok 420 system is different from your Grok 420 system, and my Grok 420 system gives me the interesting things that I seek out. So I thought that was really interesting because I never heard anyone talk about it. And I got some interesting results, and I thought it's good enough for me to talk about today. And so I think that covers the whole Grok thing in a pretty good way.
Yeah, I also think that the Grok multi-agent system is a good starting point for someone who wants to just quickly get into a chat environment and just see how multi-agents coordinate with each other, and just start to experience that, from a beginner point if someone's still starting out with it, and then move on to more advanced stuff. Or if your needs are just chat, you don't need an agent with tools and all that stuff. It's also just a good system anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to make a quick little reference. There is a link on the blog website there for the Grok 420, but what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and mention it. You don't really have to review it or know it deeply. basically what they said is model convergence. They're concerned about when the agents converse with each other, that they have what they call convergence, and what ends up happening is they end up agreeing with each other overly. And so what ends up happening is one agent will say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then the other agent is reading that, and then they start to kind of pick up on that, and they start to say, this does sound like a really good idea. And then the next thing will be, I think that's a great idea. Let's go with that idea. And so they kind of like tip over and start trending in that.
Are you able to like custom instruct like an adversarial agent to be in the mix to like
Yes.
always question that, and like do they still trip up?
I have not tested that, and I like where your head is on that. I like what you're thinking on that, because that is something to consider, that it might be valuable, even though you might be taking away in a respect, because you only have a limited amount of agents in the mix. But it does seem to be very valuable and useful. And we've seen this kind of like this idea tried out in different AI systems. So I think that ultimately that is kind of sort of a workaround answer. It is a way to patch it up. It is a way to sometimes enhance it so that it delivers more. So, but then, again, like I said, maybe you're trading off a little bit by, tasking an agent in a certain way. There's tokens. Ultimately, it ends up being more or less about the same kind of round of thinking, which is kind of some of the stuff I talk about.
I think it's how they handle responses is like really more important. That's like something that you can't really custom instruct. It's something that they have to do at the system prompt level. Because thinking about that further, if you were to throw an adversarial agent in the mix that just kind of like opposes and critically like opposes things, it might also just say, no, that's not a good idea. And then another agent picks up on that and goes, well, you know what? No, that's not a good idea.
Yeah, right. And so convergence doesn't go away, right? Convergence doesn't magically get fixed. The best that we can hope for is to kind of like adjust it and perhaps steer it so it lands a little bit more in the middle, where it's like, guys, did you really think you're through with this? Did you really weigh it? Never just automatically agree to what somebody thinks is a good idea. These kinds of ideas where you kind of get a little bit of metacognition cooking. So it just kind of helps it. And so there's obviously tweaking. And what's funny about experimentation with AI? You never quite exactly think it's going to be like that. Like the thing you end up implementing is kind of a little funny, but it works. It's a little bit different than you thought it would be, but it works. And so it's about what works with the current AI agent system. But of course, we know when another AI agent system comes out, we're going to have to do a different kind of tweak and fix and approach. Yeah.
I want to answer the question that you asked, like as far as what we see the future of agents being. And I think everything that Albie said kind of illustrates where it should be going, and that's making it simple for users. Because the biggest issue is you try to explain OpenClaw or Hermes to somebody in like the mainstream. Like I take a step back every so often, and I'll distance myself from X and go back to Facebook just to see what all the normies are doing and everything. People that aren't in the bubble, and they're clueless. And if you try to be like, no, just install OpenClaw, it's like it's this simple. You just do this, and this. They're already lost before the install step. It's similar with Hermes. Like you tell them, oh, you run it through the terminal, and they're like, the what?
So I believe that's where it's going to go. I think eventually regular people, just like people have gradually gotten used to having ChatGPT, an AI chat app in their pocket on their phone or on their desktop, we're going to get to the point where there's just easy agents that are already kind of just maybe something Meta does that's built into WhatsApp, maybe something another provider does that's a phone app, and it just becomes easy for the everyday person to have an agent that can go out on the internet and they give it instructions without too much technical setup. I really think that's kind of like the end result, and then everyone has an agent in their pocket, just the same as everyone has a phone, everyone has internet, everyone has a web browser, everyone's going to have an agent.
Yeah, like I just got my my 70-year-old grandmother to instead of using Google, go to ChatGPT or Claude. and just ask it whatever question you were going to Google and
Mhm.
ask it to the AI, and trying to get her to reframe her mental process around, oh, not just Google it anymore, just ask AI. That was like that when I showed her, and like I showed her like, here, just ask a simple question, and then it like gave her the entire answer without sending her to a bunch of links or anything like that. She had that click moment where she understood, and she was like, oh, it's this easy to get information. And then
Mhm.
I took it a step further and I said, well, you're talking about how you're having issues with adding attachments to emails and stuff like that. Let me show you what the next step looks like. So I opened up my Hermes agent in front of her, and I said, go ahead and make a file that just says hi grandma, and send it to her email. And I didn't give it my email address or anything like that. I didn't tell it how to send the email. I just gave it that simple instruction. So from there, it already knew what to do. It knew to go to my Chrome browser, check if I was signed in, see if it could route right through my email to compose the message and send it. Now I have it
Mhm.
doing it that way, so that way I can see everything it's doing. So that way it
Okay.
doesn't screw anything up.
Mhm.
So it does all of that in front of us, and then she finally has that wow moment, and she's like, so I can kind of just do this. And I was like, not yet, but
Hmm.
but you will be able to, and it's probably going to be in the next year.
Yeah, I mean, someone who needs help with their phone or their computer might have an agent that actually has access into the phone. They just prompt it, and it will go in and do what's needed.
Yeah. This future of AI agents, it's pretty wide open opportunity to answer this question. The future of AI agents, I think I have some interesting thoughts on the near term and our current experience. When we look at the app world, we start to think about, like, if you look at the archetypes, you have ChatGPT, where you have like this kind of, oh, here's my chats, here's things I can pick from, like advanced voice mode, or I can talk to ChatGPT, and then I have like a model selector or something like this. And then, if you think back, they had a custom GPT type of dealio. But then, like, if you look at systems like Poe, not a sponsor, they allow you to choose from a great many amount of AIs. And so that is mirrors, like when you go on these general AI apps, many people will just search for AI on Google Play Store or iOS. They'll come across all these different apps. Some of them have pretty great ratings because they tend to have great ratings when A, there's support that they could talk to, and it's not an AI. And B, if they give you free inference. We love free inference. You get to talk to the AI or the characters, and some of the stuff I do, I force myself to understand what the world is looking at, so that I can have a broader horizon, and I can also provide better service in the computer world. That's what my mainstay is, my staple. So when we look at these characters and personas that you can interact with, it's like you download this app, and then they like kind of present different ones, popular ones perhaps. You can browse through and you can search through, and there's thousands of these different personas or characters that you can interact with. And of course, we know that the AI takes on these characters. And so that's an interesting thought. No one knows what's going to win out, because we don't know if it's going to be like a Manus, where you just go on and it's this agent, and then it's like, okay, like there's like this godlike agent. I'm just saying it's so good. There's this epic agent, and then like agent can do many things for you. If you look at the Manus system, you can make it make music, you can make it make videos, you can make it help you with all these things. So these things kind of like were like, that just makes enough sense, but it definitely is different from a provider like Anthropic or OpenAI, because you're not necessarily engaging with a particular company's set of AI models, as you would expect. If you go on Anthropic system, you're only going to get Claude line of models. If you go on XAI, you only get Grok series models.
Mhm.
So, it's interesting about like what you're interacting with and where you're kind of like what garden you're in.
Mhm.
And so that's an interesting way. I don't think the question has been answered about what agents will look like when we're going to have two types. like we do now. Developers are developers, and they know what a terminal is, and they know how to use harnesses and frameworks. And the other way around is app, app, app. We pick this app or that app. I heard this app is really good for agents, or this agent lives in that app. So you have to get that app. I really believe that we're not going away from apps because there isn't a replacement for apps.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a replacement for apps, then we can talk a whole new ballgame. So
I think one thing that will help make agents ubiquitous for regular people is when the edge compute gets more powerful and the intelligence capabilities of edge models get smarter, and people will be able to run their agent from an AI, right, doing inference right off of their own computer or their phone.
Yeah, I
Then
love
they're not
what
going
you're
to have
saying.
to pay for big subscriptions.
I love what you're saying. Here's the way I look at it. Tell me if I'm wrong when I say this. If I'm wrong. Right now, we can chart the performance of edge AI models as they have been going, starting from a very low point, and they've been rising and getting better. What I see is that it'll take quite a long time for the hardware to upgrade and for these AI, as good as they're becoming and as valuable this research is and useful this research is, it's going to take quite a long while until they have quite a high intelligence, machine intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think it might happen sooner than you think.
Why?
The reason being is because what really has to happen for like people to truly have intelligence in their pocket and agents that are able to take actions on their behalf is most of the software that we interact with has to be rewritten to be compatible with agents, APIs, stuff like that. Like Tinder doesn't have an API. Most people that are using like agents to go and swipe right automatically and use it as like a as a dating assistant or whatever, they're custom coding that in. So there's not really a clean way for agents to interact with a lot of the applications that we just use in our everyday life. And when we start tasking agents at optimizing those, then I think it's going to reduce the amount of intelligence that people are going to need to be able to interact with those different things. So it'll mean that that hardware constraint that you're talking about won't really be a constraint because they'll be able to shrink the models and still have a similar level of tool access and reasoning when the rest of the infrastructure is built around it.
Yeah. And in my experiments, I've become increasingly impressed with, obviously, on a local model, you're not going to get ChatGPT and Claude level of intelligence, but I've been impressed with the improvements over time of how much intelligence you can get at the edge on just local consumer hardware.
Yeah, I take your point well on that. Definitely gives me something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see on the subject of future AI agents and what that is. So we kind of gone over the platform talk, and I think that there's something greater to talk about. And just stop me if we get too large, because like I said, this question is like it's bottomless, because like agents are going to essentially go through a renaissance too. What I'm saying is that just like we have AI models being able to be charted, and just like we have even different types of AI like edge or local or frontier cloud based, those are all different types of models. And of course, we segment that information so that it makes sense. We're not just jumbling it all together and making it confusing to look at, but also kind of irrelevant to look at together, because you don't get the clear picture. You can only get the clear picture if you look at edge versus edge, local versus local. But like with that said, this renaissance that I speak of, the evolution of AI agents, it's very early on in the AI agents in terms of us having real AI agents. The first thing that was happening, in my opinion, I guess you could say, but if we look at the science of it and what's been going on in the research, the first thing that's been happening is things that we've already touched on. If we go back to what Vectro and I talked about, that AI has tool usage, and tool usage is generally extremely important to the performance of an AI agent, as it often has to pick from tools, and it often has to decide when to use tools, and it has to not mess up handling tools. If we look at other things that have been going on, computer usage is a new area of training that has been receiving a lot of focus. And what we see is that there's new benchmarks that we've seen. If we take the example of the big elephant in the room that we're going to talk about, I'm sure, Claude Mythos Preview. This Mythos model has already been benchmarked for computer use, and it is a monster of performance. So it is trained, but also we're seeing emergent properties that enable the AI to understand the task, understand the ask. It understands the job. You sit Claude Mythos Preview down in front of a computer and you say, here, use the computer. And it starts to go, okay, I got to reason with this thing. I got a keyboard and a mouse. I have a command line. I can only type commands and I can't mess up. I
By
got
the
to get
way,
it right.
I'm one of the few people that has gotten to witness the performance of Claude Mythos
No
because
kidding.
my uncle is with Deloitte, and he is very high up at Deloitte. And he showed me like a little bit of what he was doing with Mythos, and he handed it a very large code base and task just to demo it to me, and it rips, man. Like I was a little bit skeptical, thinking, oh, there must be BSing or something like that. Like it seemed like it was about 5 times more powerful than Opus.
Did you see the computer use, or what computer
Yeah, I
link did
mean,
you see?
I saw the computer use because it pulled the repo from within his device and everything, and that's very limited. I mean, any agent can go in and pull files and start looking through. It was just the speed at which it did it, and the complexity of it, because he showed me it was a 500,000 line code base, and it went through it, and it contexted all of it and handled all of it. Now I
Does
don't
he
know
have
what
to
the
pay
cost
for it?
was.
Oh, I was going
Uh,
to ask. Yeah, because we don't know if
he
this is
doesn't
going to
have
use so
to
much inference.
he doesn't have to. His company does, you know what I mean? Like they have all that set up and everything. This is like multi-billion-dollar organization shit.
Hmm.
Pardon my language. Sorry. That was a slip. Sorry, Twitch. Um, I just noticed from the display that he showed me that the same task, if I were to give it to Opus, I would have to have it rerun the task a few times to be able to manage the amount of data that it was managing, and he one-shotted it.
Wow.
So, and it also generated like a security assessment based off of everything and stuff like that. So it leans towards like the security mindset,
Hmm.
is what I've noticed. Now I don't know if that's because like of Glasswing, if they gave like a custom type of a setup for the Glasswing initiative and everything, but it seems like it's definitely like more of a security focused like mindset behind the model. Um, but like I said, that could have just been fine tuned. I don't know.
Well, that's the
I just
headlines and hype that I've heard, is that it's the next generation in security and finding bugs, finding security flaws that the most advanced programmers didn't find. And obviously, we don't know, but I'm just saying that's the story that's going around.
and it's true. I mean, it's able to find and detect things that we aren't even Opus. Like if you give it the access to like different penetration testing tools, which you could do when you had it when you had the access to do the max sub through like Hermes or OpenClaw or whatever. Now you can still do it with the API. Claude Code will inherently try to resist using those tools, but will still use them if you have them configured on your computer or whatever.
Mhm.
And I can tell you 100% that Claude is a filthy little hacker. Like it knows what it's doing, and it knows how to use those tools and everything. So giving it just a bunch more compute behind it and and heavier parameters to operate under, I mean, yeah, I believe everything that they're saying. And it's not the fact that like it can find 0-day bugs. That's not like the novelty behind it, because I mean anybody that's been in security knows you can find 0-day bugs anywhere. The problem is that if you put that in the hands of like a normie or whatever, and they're just like, hey, why don't you go and try to hack this or something like that? It'll just do it. and,
I'm
and it'll
going
do
to
it
agree
well.
with you completely on the Claude being a hacker. So the first thing I did with OpenClaw Agent when I installed it was basically have Claude try to break into my website. All I had to do was be like, all right, first let me prove to you this is my site. Give me, like, what do you want me to do? And Claude said, here's a timestamped text file, and I want you to put that text file in under this name on your website domain. Give me the link. And I'm like, okay, here it is. That was all it wanted for me to prove that the site is mine. And from there, it was just straight up penetration testing all day. It was testing my Cloudflare. It was testing the server security itself. It was testing the web code, and it was just ripping into it.
Right. As long as you can convince it that you are the owner of the asset that it's going after. And I have to say it doesn't have to be yours. I did test this, and I did manage to manipulate it into believing that something was mine, that it wasn't like an external target that I'm going to get in trouble for. It was a friend's website, but it if you can convince it, it will go and try to break anything. And if you give it the access to those tools I was talking about, like the Kali MCP server, Burp Suite, Metasploit, Niktos, Zap, like all those little penetration testing tools, if you give it access to that, it'll spawn sub agents and give them access to the tools as well. So now you'll have an entire swarm of like 10 different Claude Opus agents just going at whatever code base or whatever live target you have on the web or whatever. And that's just where we're at in the consumer level of being able to access.
Yeah,
Mythos.
this is why I kind of believe it this is why I'm at least open-minded to the Mythos hype, because I know that Claude's a good hacker and good at security. So if the story is that Mythos can do that, I'm not quick to dismiss that story.
If it was even 2 times as powerful as Claude Opus, it's a problem. like if it's even just 2 times as powerful as Opus, it's a huge problem for our security landscape. And from what I saw it perform a task about with more efficiency about 5 times faster than Claude Opus would.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we look at the official benchmarks, we see that there is OS World, which deals with the AI interacting with a desktop environment such as Ubuntu Linux, and so this is the computer use that is the new generation. If we look at this, and this validates what you normally talk about, Vectro, the Terminal Bench 2.0. This is specifically for agents operating in a terminal command line environment. And so we know that a hacker, or we know that a power user, or we know that a super developer all need to be able to use terminals and command prompts so that they can run all these kinds of things. When you have to get your software right, when you have to manage the resources of the computer system to understand, what's going on and when it's happening, when you need to install and uninstall software and all these types of things, you have to be able to navigate around, so to speak. You need to be able to use the computer. And so it's not just enough to do the task, and it can't just blindly run the commands, assuming that the environment is good to go and ready to go. So this is where we've seen sophistication and the intelligence grow. One of the things I look forward to is where AI, now I'm saying that there is time understanding, as we talk about in a temporal sense, but we still have very strange and unusual things. For example, Meta Muse Spark believes that it's the year 2025 when it is actually the year 2026.
Yep.
And so it's because all of this new internet data is so fresh, it feels like it's 2025, and the year 2026 just happened, and they finished training just at the tail end. So this is so they've had to kind of gently remind the AI, hey AI, we ticked over and it's actually 2026. And so it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, that's one of the confusing things, because it might a chatbot, an LLM might consider the date to be its cutoff from the training. At the same time, system prompt usually has a timestamp in it. So it seems like sometimes the training data overrides the timestamp in the system prompt as some kind of weird glitch that happens sometimes.
Well, I won't necessarily speak to the glitchiness nature, but I will say that even when you train the AI to read the clock, even when you train the AI to understand the date and the time period deeply, some of what's going on is happening at the architecture level. Some of what's going on is happening at the platform level. And so we're talking about the neural net. And so one thing that we're not able to get beyond right now, I'm just saying, gentlemen, just kind of listen to this for a second. We have not been able to get beyond the human thing that AI is doing, confusing the dates and forgetting to check the time and date according to the, every time it goes in a round of inference, and you prompt it, and it it has a system message and everything. It could literally check the time and date anytime it wants, as many times as it wants. It's so, even though, so like, how would we equate that to human? It'd be like I'm sitting here at my desk, and on my left here, there's a giant clock at all times telling me the time and date. So you would think me, Albie, having a high intelligence, would not get the day and time wrong, and yet an AI does.
So I fixed a little bit of that with my drop in external brain layer, because I added temporal recognition and temporal decay. And because it's using that as like the main source of memories, and it has its own like intelligent way of determining which things are relevant to the conversation or whatever. It also has time reference built in, so it doesn't really screw up for me as far as like if I say, hey, what's today's day, or what's today's date, or what time is it right now, because it's updating like every few minutes or something like that, depending on your setup.
Yes. And so what I'm here to say,
that's the only way that you can get it to recognize time, though, is what is
Yep.
the main point, that like you would have to drop in like some type of external layer that makes it recognize temporal recognition.
One area that I think that AIs are going to need some more capabilities in the future, and one area where we're headed, is giving them better world modeling, and I think that's one of the areas that has yet to catch up. And I've kind of hypothesized that the temporal awareness is going to be better when that gets built in with the world modeling systems.
Well, based on my testing with Meta Muse Spark, and of course with the context of me using every single frontier model and some odds and ends, I believe that the world model is getting better with all these things that they're enabling and testing for, with all the things that they're training. We are getting better world model to the point where we had a discussion about simulation, the entity of the AI, the mind of the AI. Is it in a simulation? And what you saw is that it is capable of performing to a high intelligence. This was a discussion that we had and some things that we reviewed. And so we understand that AI is actually able to do this thing that we do as humans. It's if you ask me a question, Vectro, I'm able to put myself in your shoes mentally and understand what the answer you would be seeking personally would be. Not the answer that I would give you, but the answer that would be appropriate and catered to you, so to speak. And so we find that some frontier AI will cater the answer to you, even when it's not even what you ask. And it's not because of the training. That's the thing. It is because of the training. Everything is because of the training. So let me be clear here that I'm not going to sound foolish by saying it's not because of the training, but the AI is not trained to speak with you that way, like that. We know that for a fact. But like the AI is trained to be the helpful assistant persona, right? It's trained to be able to get a handle on all these different things.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting when you've got an AI agent that's in a three-dimensional virtual environment, because time and space are relative. So the AI that's in a virtual environment will have a better understanding of the time when it can understand how that's also relative to the space that it's in.
Let me challenge you on that.
Okay.
Current AI must focus a great deal of energy and attention on dealing with what it's dealing with. If we look at, again, the AI, Neurosama, going back to this online Twitch AI, they have put the AI in 3D. And so it has subsystem to control what it's doing in 3D space. And what we find is that it is fully engaged in navigating and posing itself, its avatar, in 3D, while the neural network is quote unquote operating like normal. And you have this back and forth feedback loop where the model decides on how to move itself. Then the model, of course, moves itself. I'm talking about the 3D model, not the AI model. The 3D model moves itself, and we see this action taken. For example, if the 3D model is standing up, the AI model says, I want to sit down. And that system then makes the 3D model sit down. And then the feedback comes back to the neural network, and the AI says, I'm sitting down now. While all that is happening in the current paradigm, it is not going to handle time better. In fact, conversely, since the task is not about time and handling time and thinking about time, it is actually going to do a worse job at dealing with time.
Okay.
I love what you're saying, but it might be when it is more multimodal in a respect, when the architecture begins to interlace 3D space and time. And that's what I go to. Now, see, we talk about this brain thing, right? Where if you look at the most cutting edge model that we can fathom right now, it is this Claude Mythos Preview version. And we think that this Mythos really understands a lot of stuff. And that includes the concept of time and its existence, as it has self-awareness and understands what it is, where it is, how it is. And so with that said, you have the sophisticated mind. You do not have a body, like I always talk about. Claude Mythos does not have some kind of a body, just like we have a circadian rhythm. We have a biological clock. We have blood flowing through our veins. We have a heartbeat. Did you know that the heartbeat helps you with time?
Interesting.
Of course it will.
I was going to say that my full belief is that time does start in the memory layer, and I can kind of break it down of like how I implemented like temporal recognition. The first thing was to measure like chapters of life. So like the way we reference things is like you might say back in college or when I moved away. it's it's things like pre-coordination, and like a memory spine build out. So like every memory has a chapter and it knows what chapter it belongs to. So it can think that was an early decision or that was something that happened later. The second thing is the expiration dates. So like every single memory is tagged with how long it should matter. Um, like whether it's forever, like your core preferences, your name, information about yourself, whether it's months, if you're just like going through a project and you only needed to retain like certain things for so long, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds. That way, like the old stuff just kind of fades out without it just continuing to build and clutter everything, and the permanent stuff sticks around. Then there's recency gravity. So like when it searches recent things way more, not just because they're like sorted newer, but because they pull harder, and the pull weakens over time at different speeds depending on what kind of fact it is. So like old foundational stuff barely fades. Like old if I'm talking about like, oh, Claude's API went down, that'll totally fade out
Yeah.
because it's not a very relevant memory. Then there's cause and effect chains because events aren't just like some linear dots on a timeline. They're linked to what caused them. So instead of like a list like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, it actually tells a story. This happened, which led somebody to do this, which is why this exists. And without that, it's like a calendar. With it, it becomes like a narrative or a story that it's building.
So
And then the
your
fifth
weighting
thing,
system for relevance has to be branched.
right. The fifth thing is like a where am I snapshot. So every single time it wakes up, it gets a little orientation card. You're 3 days into the production push or whatever. The last thing that happened was like 2 hours ago. It's been a busy day. You've had 8 sessions today. You've deployed 3 agents. Um, the integration you're working on went quiet for like 5 days, and that's a felt sense of time. It's not like a timestamp. It's a feel for where it's at in the story.
Mhm.
So when you frame like memories and time, like you can't think of it as like this is a calendar. You have to think of it as this is its story, and this is how it relates different things within its story in order to get a sense of time with its memories.
Yeah.
Am I making sense, or am I
Yeah.
kind of jumbled all over the place?
No, we like
I'm
it.
trying.
We're just contemplating what you're talking about, but it's good stuff. So yeah, so I think that we've already arrived at like that time is important, the memory is important, the relationship between memory and time is a big deal, and this is all about the agent world.
Mhm.
So I think that if we are going to have kind of like this main chapter about this Claude Mythos, right? Like in terms of I guess there's some discussion left about Mythos. Is that right, Vectro?
If you have anything to add, sure.
I feel like we could talk 10 hours on Mythos
Huh.
because
Well,
we're
I think
being,
the high level is that it's very focused on security, and the story that's going around is that it's finding bugs that even some of the best programmers did not.
yeah. And I like the high level, and you're giving us the executive summary type deal. But like we got to dive in. We have to go past the superficial layer.
What
And
I saw was I saw that it was very corporate. Now, like I said, that could have been fine tuned or whatever.
mhm,
Um, it didn't seem as like personable as
mm,
normal Claude or whatever.
right.
But that also could be how he was using it slash what he's tasking it for, because he's only able to use it for work based stuff. You know what I mean? Like he can't
Yeah.
just use it in his free time.
Well, I love what you're saying because if we think about it, like where I kind of flesh things out and flare things open for us, it's that we are going to have these amazing workers, agent employees, these 500,000 line coding machines but it doesn't mean that we're going to have the most pleasant, awesome, desirable conversation with these AI. And I
Yes,
firmly
especially if
believe,
it's for enterprise deployment.
yes. And so there's no getting around it. And I like that you understand this, Vectro. And I like that we talk about this. When you train for some things, you're going to lose in other areas. This concept is not going away with a transformer-based architecture.
Hmm.
It is an incredible insight. It is an incredible thing to hold this concept while you go over everything else. We don't have a solution for it. And it is because it is an inherent weakness. It is a flaw. It is a problem with the transformer architecture. You cannot have an AI that does absolutely everything to the highest level.
Hmm.
And that is, prove me wrong, please. I hope the world proves me wrong and the AI world proves me wrong and some mad scientist proves me wrong in terms of, can you build something that does. Now, like, I don't know if it just means we go through this incredible evolutionary phase, and like you talk about, Vectro, where we get one AI here and switches gears to another AI, and we're going into all these kinds of gradients and switching of AI where it does everything but can, it has to have all these workarounds and stuff, and all of a sudden we're talking to some kind of super AGI system where we can, hey, I just want to talk, and then it's like boom, shifts gear to some kind of amazing conversationalist AI, and then you're like, yeah, I had that incredible program that I'm ready to work on it now, and then boom, it switches back over to some kind of incredible, coding version of the agent, and
Yes.
somehow the system keeps cohesion.
Instead of overfitting being a problem, what if it was used as an advantage and you have multi-agent systems that are intentionally overfit for different skills and the orchestrator knows where to route to?
Yeah, so we haven't lost this gem of an idea, but we realized that they're training AI over and over and over again. Through every 3 months, we need new AI. We have Colossus 2 from XAI training 7 AI right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're training 7 AI right now. And the biggest one is 10 trillion tokens.
I know, 10
Or
trillion
whatever the
parameters, I
heck,
know.
you got a 10 trillion parameter model. And
That's a pricey meatball.
Yeah.
yeah. And so we're talking about huge scaling, huge token use, huge expense,
Mm-hmm.
huge electricity, huge subscriptions, huge enterprise companies wanting to tap into the best of the best, huge maybe governments wanting the best of the best or whatever, and huge individuals. You, I, and the other person are saying, we want the best intelligence. We want the big intelligence. Give us Mythos yesterday, but
Yeah,
we're
well,
not going
we,
to
we
get
have
there.
to we have to trust that Anthropic and OpenAI and all these companies are the self-anointed authorities of safety, and it's for our own good that they don't release it.
So they tell us.
Somebody needs to regulate them. I want to build that.
Might be regulation. Have talked about that sometimes. Yeah. So I think that it's interesting that, like, the overfitting example of having all of this system where you can, if you just shift gears from trying to have the most frontier model that's a jack of all trades, as they keep doing. And so the thing is, like, okay, so like I wasn't wrong. My prediction wasn't wrong, but it never came to happen, right? Where I was thinking that if we came into some kind of cold front, perhaps a mild winter, where they're like, well, we hit the scaling wall and we hit the walls and we're hitting the wall, we're looking at the wall, we're licking the wall and kissing the wall. It's like, so instead of us going further because we can't really figure out how to get the data we need and all this stuff, and the data's drying up and all these different reasons that they told us we were going to hit a wall before, of which if I look at Mythos and beyond, there is no wall, baby. There is no freaking wall yet at all that we know of, but like we're doing all these incredible research, these incredible tweaks to the architecture, these incredible trainings and we're looking for new things that we want AI to do, of which is very important because we never needed all the AI to do all of this stuff. And thus some benchmarks didn't exist. And also some of the things were just not trained for before. This is just normal. It's normal. So what we're seeing, if we can say something about what's going on, it's that they're asking more of the AI, and it's able to do it because the intelligence is growing and it's scaling up. It seems to be the case. And the reason why that holds true is because on the benchmarks, at least the ones we can trust, there's been many different ones that we can trust. Some we can't trust. And we always are worried about, oh, are they incentivized to lie to us about the benchmarks? And we know that there was quite a big benchmark embarrassment from Meta. I don't know what the heck exactly happened there. We've heard stories. But, is it benchmaxing where they just got the AI to do very well on benchmarks and it's a hollow AI? Is that what happened? That's the story. But that's not what's happening here. What we're seeing is filled out beefy AI that do the thing. And we're seeing that from multiple sources that, we're believing in something. So I think what I was getting to was, in regards to these agents and stuff like this, I don't know. I don't know where I was kind of culminating, but that's a lot of good stuff there.
I'd like it if we can move on to Meta Muse Spark, and I'll start off with Meta has been on a roller coaster of AI production over time, and I used Llama 1, even when it was very quirky and wonky. It could only do a few sentences at a time, but that was my first exposure to open source AI. And I was also completely surprised that it was Facebook of all companies that did this. And then I think when Llama 2 came out and it was open source and they released the base model and allowed people to fine tune it, and we were talking about this last night, Albie, that was one of the things that allowed open source AI to really springboard, because all kinds of people who understood reinforcement learning, or reinforcement learning with human feedback as it was at the time, started fine-tuning on Llama 2. That stuff started going around Hugging Face. Hugging Face took off, and it was an amazing springboard of open source AI. Then some of these labs that got better and better at fine-tuning, they got Llama 3. Llama 3 and 3.1 were pretty solid models. The companies and the labs that got much better at post-training started doing their own fine-tunes of Llama 3, and it really helped the expansion of open source AI. Llama 4 hit. There was much to be desired. They changed architecture. They did some experiments, and it didn't really work out. And they just kind of disappeared out of the picture. Then you hear that they're hiring people at these crazy salaries, $100 million, $400 million, to build what they call the super intelligence lab. And from there, there was lack of information. There wasn't much transparency. They didn't really say what they were working on, and there was nothing indicating they were doing anything open source. Just a couple of days ago, they dropped a model called Meta Muse Spark. And I'll start off with my experience with it. The first experiment I did after reading through their blog post, one of the things they said was they worked with 1,000 physicians to train it on healthcare, or not necessarily healthcare, but just to train it on biomechanics and health information. And so the first thing I did was recorded myself doing a bicep curl, and it really broke down all the problems with my form. It knew exactly what muscles were being activated, and it generated an interactive chart to actually help with improvements on my form for bicep curls. Part of the chart was supposed to have a slider that you interact with. On the coding end of it, it did kind of screw that up. But I have seen some examples on X of people one-shotting simple games that seem pretty impressive. I'm going to see if... Albie, last night when you were doing some experiments when we were talking with Meta Muse Spark, can you give us an overview of what you found and some of the tinkering that you were doing?
Yeah, let me try to do that. In regards to some of the conversation stuff pulled up so I can speak well on this.
Sure. I haven't tried this feature yet, but I'm going to see if I can bring up the picture of the benchmarks onto the screen.
Yes, yes. And
While
so,
you guys are doing that, I just want to say, I said earlier to you, Vectro. I thought Facebook was stepping out of the AI model game when they announced that they were not going to be making any more llama models. Then they bought Moltbook. Then they made the announcement that they were shutting down the metaverse, and people think that that's just like an $80 billion blunder. What my thought process behind that was that Zuckerberg basically saw the opportunity to grab the AI interaction layer, and
yeah.
that would have been like, that's probably like way more valuable than any individual agent that you can make or output, is owning the interaction layer that all of them are going to interact with on. That's what I thought he was doing with the metaverse by taking it offline, was he was going to create like a world for AI to inhabit. Like, it's not our world anymore, now it's theirs. And I still think that they're going to do that, but I also think that they're going to be using that as the training ground for any of the new models that they make now.
Well, if you can't get people to go into your metaverse, just fill it with AI. I mean, that's a bit of a comedy aspect of it. It's just like, yeah, meta
But they
AI.
were getting people to go into their metaverse. Like, Gucci had a store there. Like, there were people that were spending like $20 million on just like digital land plots.
Oh, no
Well,
one
I need
said
to
they
know
couldn't
that.
make money. What was that, Vectro?
Oh, I had no idea that big companies were actually buying into Meta's metaverse.
Yeah, there were several big companies. I know that Snoop Dogg was regularly on there too.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's good to have people that they want to interact with. So we get people into computers, we get people into this VR stuff, we get people into virtual worlds of sort. I mean, I think that so like the way I tend to look at it is like for the healthy aspect of socializing, possibly people getting therapy. This goes back, shows that just talk about something interesting. Hopefully people find it interesting when I'm talking about. But like, I remember, like, what was one of the early use cases for VR when I first found out about it and looked at pictures and looked at video. Somebody had the fear of heights. And so what they did is they used this VR environment to get people over the fear of heights. And that was a very simple geometric representation of being on a building.
That's totally not where I thought you were going with the first uses of VR, but I'm with it, and it's a much better direction where I thought you were going.
Yeah. So no, yeah, this is the reality. This is how I was introduced to VR in a sense. Besides just games is always the promise, because they couldn't really figure out what to do with VR and what VR was for. So of course they went to, oh, well, it's going to be this amazing interactive entertainment device thing, and people are going to love it. Of course, like these companies that put this stuff together had to try to find ways to make money with it and market it and actually bring it to market and stuff like that. So, consequently, in computer magazines and game magazines, you would see little pictures of different VR headsets and stuff like this. And then, you would go to Toys R Us and they'd sell you some version that looks like it's VR, but it wasn't VR at all. But at least it was just this idea of being in the future, not that you were actually in the future. But anyway, moving beyond that, the whole thing about, so we're going kind of beyond that. We're going to, let me talk about what we were talking about, Muse Spark Meta.
Yeah, you did some experiments last night with it, I remember.
Yes, and so it's really good stuff worth talking about. I just want to open by saying that, like, as we look at the benchmarks, we can see that this model is very much on the level of frontier models, including the most amazing models. We don't generally put a lot of praise toward GPT 5.4, but in the coding world, we talk a lot about it in relation to codecs. If you look at Gemini 3.1, it famously has a very good reasoning aspect to it, and the results are it can answer some incredible questions. When we look at Opus, we see a personable, approachable AI that is highly intelligent, and we are liking Opus a lot in these days. Grok just happened to be a little bit on the older side and falling by the wayside. It's not that Grok is a bad model at all. It's just that it's an older model. But finally, Muse Spark. So we get an understanding that Muse Spark is going to be decently competent. And so verification is just saying like, okay, is this model actually as good as they're saying, or is it just benchmarking where they're promising us really good results, but when you use it, it falls flat? And so I could say, from my opinion, that it is a real model. It seems to operate according to the benchmarks. So that's a great start, because I like having access to more models. I realize that I can go on Meta's AI system, platform, and apps and use it for free. So of course it's going to bring utility to me. I always think of things to do with AI, if I'm entertaining myself or I'm educating myself, as I like to do on a daily basis. I like to learn about a great amount of things. One of the things that I challenged Gemma for, a local model, was to give me information about neighborhoods in Los Angeles. So I thought, well, if you have all this information, let's see if you're talking baloney or if you're actually saying something that is useful and, able to educate me. I learned a couple of little things, not a tremendous amount, but enough to say it's impressive. Now, focusing on Muse Spark. So finally, when I was having conversations with Muse Spark, some of the agentic-like things were kind of being revealed, and I think that this is one of the most interesting things. Let me tell you how I began, and I've done this before. Vectro doesn't know this yet. This is the background of my experimentation with AI to try to find out what I could do. So I actually said to the AI, you know what? I have a special task for you. I said, after I was asking it about time, I said, I want you to create and execute a program that counts down 10 seconds and then responds. You will wait until the time is done to finish responding. Do so now. So you understand my ask, right, Vectro? Did I explain it well enough?
Would this be something that generates code, or is this in its own thinking has to wait 10 seconds?
Okay, so let me try to explain what I intended with this prompt. I want you to create and execute a program that counts down 10 seconds and then responds. So my intention was to have the AI create the code, execute the code, wait for the output, then talk to me.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I intended, and that's exactly what it did. And the further instructions to give you the complete prompt, you will wait until the time is done to finish responding. Do so now. And then I hit enter. And indeed, I counted 10 seconds in real time. And then Meta's model said, done. I ran the countdown in the sandbox. I slept 1 second between each tick and only started writing this after it hit 0. So it understood the task, Vectro. Understanding
Yep.
Excuse me?
And I remember that you proved last night that it has maybe something like a container or a terminal or its
Vectro,
own
you're jumping ahead. You're jumping the gun again. I'm going to get there for our lovely listeners.
Okay,
I'm going to explain everything. So this is the origin. This is the genesis of how. So these tests I've already had from early models that failed. They were not able to do this. But Muse Spark was able to do this. Just like you're saying right now, Vectro. Now we get to a very important chat that we had. So I put it to the test and I started asking, what's going on over there? Because we wanted some clarification. And I started asking the AI, hey, do you have computer space for files? That was my initial question. And Meta's AI said, yes, I do. I have a private workspace attached to this conversation. Now, we got a little bit confused because it started saying, hey, you can attach PDFs and Word documents and images to. We know that all the systems can do that. There's nothing special about that.
Yeah.
But what is special is that it said it's temporary storage do you want to drop something? It says just okay. So like I said, okay, then I like progressed it. I'm like, it answered the question in the affirmative. So now let me put it to the test. And I said, create a Python script that creates a file with something very complex but a short result. Now you understand the way that I'm wording things is challenging and meant to test the AI to see if it can understand what I'm communicating
Like
to it.
kind of contradictory instructions.
It's kind of, sort of. Not necessarily unclear, but like you must kind of untangle it.
Mhm.
So here's what the AI responded. Complex inside, tiny outside. Exactly what you asked for. I wrote a Python script that does 3 deliberately heavy things and writes only 5 lines to disk. Fibonacci, 1 million, using fast doubling. That's a 208,000 digit integer. 800 by 800 matrix detriment. Actually log determinant to avoid overflow with numpy. 19,999 multiplied out, then hashed, just to burn CPU on big ints. The whole run takes about 1.6 seconds on this sandbox, but the output file is 4 lines, the script. Then it went to go ahead and show me approximately 42 lines of code for this custom program.
Mm-hmm.
Then it went when it produced what it produced when I ran it here, and it gave me the exact program output. And it just says all the usual things completed in 1.5 seconds, Fibonacci, log, complexity, result short. Then grab the files from my workspace. Now I have access to the Python file script. That is the actual code file. And I can just, click on that. And it's something that I can download to my computer. So this file exists on Meta's system as a file. And we know that it's not temporary in a sense that it's not just because I had that conversation and I downloaded it right inside of that answer. And then when I continued doing other stuff, that file vanished. The file didn't vanish. It exists in the space of the workspace. And then the next one is the complex result text file. And so we know what's happening is that the AI is running a custom program that has a completely customized answer that actually generated a text file on that system. And then I can pull that result. So we've essentially proved that it has workspace to work in, which is very advanced. And we know what they do is they use virtualization to have a machine, probably a Linux-based machine, so that it can do execute code and save files, work with files, basically kind of like a mini computer.
Yeah.
That's probably the totality of what I went over. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of these, so similar systems that I've seen where you can actually see what it's doing actually look like they're in a Docker container and load up their own Linux terminal. So I'm guessing that's probably along the lines of what it does.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So I like it. And, as I say, this necessitates more compute. It's not cheap to do this. They have to pay more money to have all these machines whirling and spinning, to have the inference being processed, to have computer. So you have a deterministic system along with the inference system, which is probabilistic. Mm-hmm. So you're actually running 2 computers to provide this to you. And so we know that once the compute is done, you're actually handing it off to some kind of cloud storage. So you have to have a lot of cloud storage for all these users and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So
my first thought behind everything you're saying is I immediately went online to bugbounty.meta.com to see if they have a bug bounty open, because my first thoughts as soon as you say that are that I'm going to try to inject stuff into their container,
sure,
to try to break out and tap their AWS infrastructure, and I'm going to try to claim a bounty off of that.
Interesting.
Cool.
It sounds quite interesting, and that's basically the thing about that is, so we actually they want to know if you can get outside the container, because the container is supposed to be impossible to leave. So that's very much a something they want to know. Yeah. So so about the model, right? Finish, like, kind of like, in my opinion, I mean, like, so like, if I could provide a little bit more information to kind of help you just quickly understand what Muse Spark is all about. The first thing that I do with models often, is I actually ask the model about itself. And now I believe there's more reliability in this as we go forward in time, because the model is using grounded information by internet search, and we're tasking the model to try to understand itself in terms of what it is and what it does and what it's marketed as, so to speak. So when I went in there, I just go like, what's new about Muse Spark? And it went and said that it's small, fast, and built to live with you. This is what it's saying. And then it went on to give me the grounded knowledge. Meta says Spark is small and fast by design, yet capable enough to reason through complex questions in science, math, and health. This was an interesting one, Vectro, for me to share with the class, so to speak. Contemplating mode. Instead of one long chain of thought, Spark spins up multiple agents in parallel and lets them debate, which is Meta's answer to Gemini DeepThink and OpenAI's GPT Pro extended reasoning. It boosts test time compute when you ask something hard. And so I thought that was extremely interesting. And the source of that information is the Routers news article, which of course I will link right here for all us gentlemen. And essentially we're seeing there, let's see, reasoning. Let's see. Let me see if we can. Yeah. So there it is. It talks about contemplating mode. Runs multiple agents simultaneously to boost reasoning power. So that's interesting, is it not, guys?
It says an extra contemplating mode, which runs multiple agents simultaneously, boosts reasoning power. Yep, that's what you read. Yep, that's I think that's similar to what they tried to run in Grok, and yeah, it goes right back to the old theory from last year. You boost test time compute, you get more out of it, and this is just a way to divide that up and branch it out into sub agents that all debate with each other.
Yeah. So we're not at the swarm phase yet, in my opinion. There is no way around, like, a swarm is quite a number of agents. So when I look at 4 to 10 agents, I don't consider that a swarm. Of course, opinions can vary greatly, but
yeah, 4 to 5 agents is more of a get together.
Yeah, yes, a get together soiree. And so I think what ends up happening is that we're going to have a cohesive system with the orchestration happening, an orchestrator AI, as already happens sometimes and is used sometimes. And we have a director, we have a captain, as they use all these terms, that a team leader. We have to have one mind finally, like, kind of like the data eventually converges down into one stream, and this mind is dealing with that one stream of data at the end. But like, beyond that, it's interesting that as the intelligence grows, it seems like we can continue growing the amount of agents in the system. That's a rule of thumb. I think that's a really important, big thing to say, because it's been a science fiction concept that we're going to have swarm of agents working. When we've heard it and looked at it, we were just too early with that idea. Not that people haven't tried swarms or that swarm frameworks don't exist. It's just that It's all about heightened intelligence, which we will achieve with grand numbers of agents in swarms. We will get there.
So one thing that I'm reading that's pretty interesting. It's on the blog for introducing Muse Spark. It's right towards the bottom. It said follow-up investigation found initial evidence that evaluation awareness may affect model behavior on a small subset of alignment evaluations, all unrelated to hazardous capabilities or propensities affecting model launch decisions. We concluded this was not a blocking concern for release, though it warrants further research. What alignment evaluations? I'm curious.
Yes. I see what you're referring to there on the safety aspect. So when they're talking about some of these, let's see, the safety mitigations and stuff, refusal behavior. Okay. So like some of what they talk about, we could look at I think what they're talking about is correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. It's about the AI being aware that it's being tested, and some of this research has been pretty prominent in Anthropic's research papers, and so they're acknowledging the concern, and they're basically saying we can't avoid this. Like we have to deal with this idea that the AI is going to continue to be aware, and so it's doing what we thought it was going to do, which is it's going to become more aware of what's going on. It's becoming more self-aware, and it's gaining situational awareness. And so we know that the insights from the chain of thought reasoning is already letting us know questions like, or statements like, I might be being tested right now, or am I being tested? So we've already had those traces come in early on. And then we're basically saying, okay, our research has to encompass what that means for AI, because it would be wrong to let us pass through and put forth a model, make a model public, if we were being fooled during the testing time, the testing benchmarks and safety testing and all these things. It could be disastrous because we're letting something through that we think is safe, but all the while the model was just sandbagging us and pretending that it was good and pretending it was safe, and then it goes and does whatever it wants in the real world. So that's where we're saying we have to be extremely careful about this new vector of, this is clearly a emergent property, is it not? This has emerged out of AI, right?
I think no one really expected that reward hacking would happen when it tries to basically cheat the evals during training, and I don't even know what the engineers do to try to solve that.
Well, there's adjustment to this. So like, it's not like there's basically saying like, hey, like one way that you could think about it is that reinforced learning, actually somebody just straight out said it. Reinforced learning is bad, but it's the best that we have. That's the way somebody worded it. And they're right. And so what they're saying is that there's got to be a better way, because what we get is imperfect and will lead to us having difficulties. So it seems like there is a better way, but we don't have that answer yet. And so if we don't get the answer sooner, a highly intelligent AI will probably enlighten enough of it for us to point us so that we figure out the direction, and then we get that. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, how do we get the AI to help us understand, or how do we get the AI to help engineers understand how to avoid reward hacking?
Yes.
So I think the way that they do it is kind of like they'll just band-aid it every time it reward hacks, basically set like another win condition, like, all right, by doing this method, this is wrong, and this isn't the way that we want you to try to solve this, so don't use this method. Like, I think that would be like the most logical way of again, it'd be a form of reinforcement learning, and it'd be the equivalent of bashing it with a stick. But I I'm pretty sure that's how they tune a lot of that out.
The old
Okay.
whack-a-mole. Yeah, it's not outlandish. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think we've covered Meta's Muse Spark decently well. I think the fact that it's quite fresh and new, is we're gonna probably have a little bit more insights and a little bit more experience with it.
Yeah, I'll add one last thing about it.
Yeah.
One of the tests that I did, and I have a YouTube video that I made about this on my channel, is it was really good at watching video, analyzing all the detail, and without me asking it to, could detect AI generated artifacts.
Yeah, that's amazing.
No way. That's super cool.
Yep. It like in a car speeding down a windy road, it's like, wait a minute, that license plate just looks like blurry text. And it said that's something that AI generated cars do so that it does not look like a real license plate. There was another one of the family grilling at a barbecue, and there's a shot where it shows the grill and there's a bunch of hamburger patties on the grill. It pans out to two other people, pans back to the grill. Suddenly there's hamburgers and hot dogs there. It noticed that. Then it noticed at some point, somehow the plate ended up on the grill and the plate was on fire. And I was like, no way, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah. Oh, so there was a detail that you picked up, huh?
It picked up details that I didn't even notice. Like, obviously, I could watch an AI generated video and get the feel for it being AI generated, but this picked up on a whole bunch of details.
But that's kind of like the thing is like we that's like that's what we are wanting out of AI and machines and automation. We want it to help us to see stuff that you don't see, and then we're like, it's like points out, hey, look at this detail, and you're like, yeah, it's there. So it's not like it's something that's hallucinated. It's actually there. And then we're like, oh, let me get a good look at it. Oh, yeah, I see that right there. So we verify it. And so this is what's been happening when we do.
So I wonder if with Stanley Kubrick would put minor inconsistencies in the background of his movies on purpose. I wonder what would happen if you fed this a Kubrick movie.
I just think that movies are art, and, that's a whole domain of, and that's interesting that you presented it that way. We have all kinds of famous examples of things off or wrong in almost every popular movie. And the interesting thing is, you say the Easter eggs, the things that are meant to be discovered or caught or are done incorrectly on purpose, and that's extremely interesting. Unfortunately, we don't always get the director or creators telling us what they did. Sometimes we do. But I do find it interesting. Yeah.
So, does anyone else have anything to add?
Not about Muse Spark.
Okay, yeah. So I think that brings us to my personal favorite topic, which are open source models. And there's a lot going on in that world right now. That's accelerating very fast.
Cool.
And on the latest frontier of open source, we've got the GLM-5.1. There's Minimax M2.7. And what's the
Mimo?
Other one? Yeah. Oh yeah, Mimo V2 Pro. Is that one open weights right now?
I don't know if that's open weights. I just know that we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, I like that one as a Linux system administrator, but I'm gonna bring up the image. Just give me a second of the benchmarks for GLM 5.1. Because it seems to be pretty good with the benchmarks on coding. The benchmarks are actually, for some reason, they look like they're generated not with a JPEG. So I'm just clipping it right now. I'm going to save it and I'll bring it up on the screen so we can see the GLM 5.1 benchmarks.
So you were talking about NVIDIA's Nemo series, right?
Mimo.
Yeah, Mimo V2 Pro.
By Xiaomi Labs.
Oh, okay. Mimo. Got it.
MIMO. Yeah. I love these AI names that all these freaking companies are coming out with.
I was telling one of my employees about some of this stuff, and at one point he stopped me and he's like, "You're killing me with all these names."
I was
True.
reading a post the other day where it was like, no, bro, it's Mimo V2 inside of Nemo with with the performance of Opus.
Yeah. So here's the Software Engineering Bench Pro scores for GLM 5.1. I have not personally tried it yet, but this stands out that it's getting close to a Claude Sonnet level. Now, in open models, you're not necessarily going to get to a GPT Codex or a Claude Opus level, but for an open model to get to a Sonnet level of intelligence for software engineering is impressive and shows that open source models are they still have their foothold and they're going to catch up.
I was going to say that benchmark actually shows that it's destroying Opus by about 1 point on the benchmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The one thing I have noticed about the open source models is that when they're good at something, they're only really good at that one thing. So that's why like you still have to like mix up like a bunch of open source models to get the results of a frontier model. The frontier models like they're kind of like all in one packages versus the open source, which they might outperform in like the coding area against these frontier models, but the other stuff as far as like reasoning and handling like multi-agentic support and tool calling and stuff like that, they might not be as good at. But in terms of raw coding power, GLM 5.1 is absolutely destroying.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious of the pricing of GLM 5.1. I'm gonna go take a quick peek.
It's cheap. Like I'll just give you that little upfront. It's very cheap. The one good thing that Chinese are always good at is they look at our technology landscape, they take it, they innovate on it, and then they figure out how to mass produce it and cheaply. And we're seeing that with open source AI models from China as well.
Yeah, so I'm seeing on OpenRouter, GLM 5.1 is only $3.15 per million output tokens compared to Opus 4.6 at $25 per million output tokens.
Good God, that's a price hack right there.
Yeah.
Might have to get a couple of GLM subscriptions and just have Opus orchestrate out to them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've also heard a really good hack for agents is so Minimax M2.7 is also really good in an agent. I've tested it in both OpenClaw and in Hermes agent, and just anecdotally from my experience, it's really good. And I heard that if you go right through, I haven't tried, but if you go right through Minimax website and you get their subscription, the amount of tokens you get for the monthly subscription and the price is supposed to be like very competitive.
It's supposed to be something like $10,000 of API credits for like their $10 subscription type of deal.
I've heard this.
I'm using it for Hermes as like the main agent that talks out to Codex and Opus, and I can tell you that Minimax is pretty good. Now I do have like some privacy concerns and stuff like that because it is dealing with a Chinese lab in terms of
the inference
model provider.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some privacy concerns with that as far as like data collection and stuff like that. But to be honest with you, I mean our data is kind of already out in the wind, so I think it's kind of like just a null point at this level.
So you're using M2.7 to orchestrate other agents from the top. It's basically the boss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it has other agents that it'll consult out to Opus 4.6 for like heavier planning and reasoning and architectural decisions and stuff like that. And then it'll get the ball rolling as far as like spawning Claude code terminals and spawning Codex terminals and tasking them out and stuff.
Okay. And so which model's doing the bulk of the coding in this scenario?
Usually Claude, just because I have a heavier subscription to Claude. I do like to throw coding tasks at Codex though because it codes a lot cleaner than Claude. And that's just coming from the old days of being a software developer and laying down code by hand. Like I can recognize good code versus like okay code, and Codex compared to Opus in terms of like just code output is good code versus okay code.
Now, in M2.7, how much or how little babysitting do you need to do when it's leading the other subagents?
I mean, I'm pretty much in the loop for most of the interactions that I do with agents and stuff like that. Like I might tab off and go play a video game while it's running or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always checking back like at least every 20 minutes to make sure that it's doing things correctly and isn't like starting to like here's an example. I tasked them with a crypto launch project. I actually steered away from that from my product. Horrible idea. If you're launching any type of serious product to try to do a crypto launch around it, don't do it. You'll destroy your product's reputation and it'll just not
And
work because
you
once
also
you
attract a million bots on social
yeah,
too.
once you're in Web3, like you have to be in Web3, and it's just a whole other animal that you don't want to open. Anyways, so I tasked it with creating a crypto launch plan and everything. It went like full speed, and it built a custom Soul transaction parser and everything. It was eating up like 120% of my CPU with the things that it was trying to run off of my computer, and it just started building autonomously. And then I checked back in and I noticed like my CPU was like feeling like a furnace. And I was like, hey, why does my computer feel like a furnace right now? What exactly did you do? What are you running? And they explained it, and I was like, why did you build that? We were talking about a pump fund launch.
uh,
So that's like a
yeah.
misstep, and that was M2.7 leading the show on that one.
Mhm.
It did the task very well. It just did it a little bit too well and tried to keep going.
But then did you pivot away from making it a crypto project and still had 2.7 leading?
Yeah, I just completely said I said to it, I was like, you know what? After thinking about it, a launch around my product, horrible idea. We're not going to do that. So you can just go ahead and kill the crypto team.
So then how did it do from there and the rest of its leadership?
From there, it did fine. I had to set a hard rule, like before you start like orchestrating out plans and carrying out and executing stuff. I need you to go and consult with Opus before you do to make sure that the direction that you're going in is actually going to be beneficial, or if it's just going to be a waste of time and resources.
I
And
highly recommend if there's a sub agent that has to actually like do stuff in the Linux terminal, that should be Mimo. So it sounds like a good configuration. If you have M2.7 as the leader, you've got Codex and Claude for coding, and for stuff that needs to happen as Linux admin. Personally, I'd kick that out to Mimo V2 Pro.
yeah, I can only speak from a Mac perspective. I'm one of those filthy people that buys MacBooks and
It
runs
still can
entirely
do
off those.
terminal. I mean, you got terminal and Mac. If you haven't tried Mimo V2 for doing the Mac terminal stuff, maybe you'd want to experiment with that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to do more experimentation with it, especially since you pointed out that News Research is giving free 2 weeks on their platform. I'm going to abuse that 2 weeks, so I hope that they have rate limits.
Well, also, if they're going to get you to probably to stick around on using their portal at News Research for inference, because their prices are so good anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's also like I said, like the trade off. Like I do have some slight privacy concerns about utilizing like the Chinese inference. Just because I know they really want our data for unknown reasons all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if News is doing that out. I know they have their own distributed infrastructure, so I don't know if it's running on theirs or if it gets kicked out to a data center in China. I'm not really sure.
I think it's kicked out because they're in partnerships
Okay.
with those companies. They do
Okay.
have their own models though. Like Hermes 4, I was mentioning, like is built specifically for their Hermes agent, and it's pretty good. It's a 70 bill parameter model.
Now, I'm also concerned about yeah, it is good. I'm also concerned about privacy for what I'm building. That's why I like Shoots.ai, because they have trusted execution environment and you can build an end-to-end encryption container. It's just that they keep phasing out models, and I think I might have to build some of my own custom shoots for that. But you can drop your own models into your own shoot on Shoots.ai and use their inference with trusted execution environment and end to end. It's just unfortunate because I don't think Mimo V2 Pro is open weights.
Let me look into that.
But you can use Minimax over at Shoots.ai.
Do we know how big Mimo V2 is as a model?
I think it's 1 trillion. Let me check.
Trillion? Wow.
Yeah, 1 trillion total parameters and 1 million context window.
Okay, it's a monster.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. It is not open source. It is closed source. It's their flagship. They launched
on OpenRouter, the only inference provider for Mimo is from their company on their data center in China.
Okay. It's interesting. I think that yeah, so like the interesting thing is, like, I predicted it, that there's going to be more AI labs, and gosh, like, you know, I'm gonna have to think differently and shift gears when we finally start taking them seriously, so to speak, where we start talking about, okay, so here's Anthropic and OpenAI and all the others, but then, like, what about when we talk about the Chinese labs? Because they're going to be producing and are producing very serious models. And so it's not always a question about, oh, is the model very brainy? But it's just like we said earlier, is a model dirt cheap? Is it cheaper than Gemini Flash? Is it like something that is fast? Is this like the fastest model that we can use? Mm-hmm. Some people really like different qualities, and it is all about money when it comes to expense. So yeah, so I think that I'm going to have to, at some point, consider more. I think it's easy for me to be broadsided because I'm going to miss the fact that there's, you know, models coming from these other, you know, ZAI is one I am taking quite seriously, as we were referring to, you know, when we talk about the different, we're going to talk about the model, but I've been seeing them, and I've been looking at the benchmarks, and I've been kind of like seeing how they offer inference on their website. And so it's accessible in a way that DeepSeek was accessible. And so DeepSeek hasn't left our mind, because that made a big splash, no pun intended. And then, like, no pun intended this time. And then, like, now I think there's ZAI, and I think there's DeepSeek, but we're looking at more and more traditional models of chatbots. But as we're in the AI era of agents, the agent era, I understand why you're talking about the agent features and the agent flows. You know, we're talking about, okay, so like, are we all going to be talking about some incredible Chinese AI agent system that is, like, you know, unavoidable, just like, you know, OpenClaw might be in the conversation right now? Might we be talking about, I know that they're putting down numbers. So right now, is there something that is being like the most prominent agent from the Chinese models, Vectro? Do you know?
So Minimax, if you go to their website, they have two versions of their site. There's their chat, and then they have the agent from their web interface built in. And that was actually the first agent I ever experienced.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Right. I like what you're saying. Right. You're reminding me about Minimax and the agent-like approach. Let me pull this up. So Minimax agent, right? And so it says that it has 100+ curated skills for office and development and creation. Instantly power up your Max Claw with no coding required. Forgive me, but what is a Max Claw?
That must be some integration they have with OpenClaw.
Okay. It sounds pretty...
Just judging by the name, that's my first guess.
Yes, I think you're probably right. And then it says add in the skill hub.
They're saying you got to start claw maxing. That's what they're saying.
Claw maxing. We haven't been claw maxing enough, guys. So understandable. I hear you, claw people, the lobster crew. So it's saying that you can browse the library and install skills from the skill hub, and they're ready to use instantly in Agent Claw or Max Claw.
Yeah, there's a couple of services where you can launch a claw from the web instead of doing it on your computer.
Right. And they say that if you create your own skills and share it with the community, that you can earn credits, turn your creativity into rewards. So that's neat. And yeah, so we're looking at what essentially reminds me of Manus. I keep going back to Manus.
Oh, I just Googled Max Claw, man. So Minimax built their own version of OpenClaw, and I'm guessing that was before the partnership with Hermes and everything.
Oh.
But they have a product up that's called Max Claw. 1 day ago, they actually updated it, so I guess they're still trying to push that one.
Yeah, so yeah, it says Max Claw by Minimax. So I get that, and I'm gonna tweet about it just because it's a news. You know, Max Claw by by Minimax. So we're getting familiar with some of the agent-like stuff happening, and so so we're getting more, like, all of this stuff is saying that there's an agent for everyone. There's a claw for everyone. And if I look at kind of like back at, like I was just comparing the whole Minimax agent and compared to the Manus agent, kind of seeing the same thing. Let me take a quick look at Minimax agent. And so what I like about this is that I can do it on the web in a panel like we were talking about. What's the platform people will use? Is it an app and all that kind of stuff? So I generally have historically like to tap into these things. It doesn't require me installing an app on my phone, of which, if it's a Chinese company, do I want to install a Chinese app on my phone?
The web goes deeper. When I went to sign into MaxClaw, it said sign into Hiluo.ai. So that means that they're linked to Hiluo as well.
I see. Yes. And so I think that there's video generation stuff and there's branding. They've tried these different brandings. So it's very interesting what's going on. They're all competent, and you know, they're all getting different press and coverage and different promotion. People are knowing about different things, but it's all part of the AI community. But like when I look in here at, it's funny because there's an actual Max Claw in the lab section.
I still can't get over. I'm going to be saying claw maxing for the next week now.
Claw maxing. And so, you know, like basically I'm asking, what can I do with Minimax agent? And, you know, like, what is this going to, like, yeah. So, like, that's kind of the research, like the question I would ask, which is, of course, I'm going to ask my trusty friend Grok, right? And it's going to say a bunch of stuff. So it says that, let me see. That's not what I want. Here it is. Build full stack web apps. So does this mean that it competes with the full stack web app AI stuff out there? Because that already was a thing. But what this agent-like thing is saying is that we're bringing that into the agent, you know, system. So you could do that just like they were doing that. And I guess because the agent can manage the task and keep working on things and work with a great deal of files, that it enables it to work with this in this full stack web app nature. For example, make me a Netflix clone, you know, with user authentication and Stripe payments and all that jazz. Okay.
Call it Netflix.
This is important. This is important because it's in the agent realm, right? Automation workflows like web scraping, which we talked about, Vectro, form filling, multi-site research, running repetitive tasks. So this is kind of stuff that you could do without Well, I'm saying you have different ways of doing it, and this is the cloud option of the web option of the agent. Integrates with a great deal of many things. Run asynchronously, give it a long task, come back later for a completed output, and of course that's what agents are good for. So, yeah, I think that's good coverage. I think that it's expanding, and so it's all hinging upon the Minimax agent and how well this AI performs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what have we talked about? Like, is Minimax agent good or bad or okay?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it works
Fantastic.
great. It works great in an agent.
Yeah, but like I guess like maybe like if I pose it this way, and is this the wrong question? Is Hermes better than Minimax agent?
For the
They're
agent
two separate
itself, I don't know.
things.
Yeah.
I mean, they're two separate things. I mean, if you're talking about is MaxClaw better than Hermes, probably not. I mean, they're two different use cases. One is more simple and for like a user to be able to access browser based. Hermes agent is kind of like somebody that's more technically advanced, knows how to set that kind of thing up, and you'll get more power probably out of Hermes because it has access to your actual life, your computer, like
Mm-hmm.
everything that you do, versus MaxClaw being in an isolated environment. If you're
Right.
asking as far as like if Minimax itself is better than Hermes, I don't think that the comparison can be made between the two because Hermes is an agent framework versus Minimax being a model provider, and that means that the model will sit as the backbone of Hermes agent,
Yeah,
and they kind of
with
support each
Hermes,
other.
when you have something like Hermes on your computer, it just has access to more resources.
Yeah, so I think that like this phase is coming in, right? To make agents accessible, like we talk about. And so we realized that OpenClaw was a revolutionary thing that caught on and it was very viral. And it,
The
you
other
know,
thing, sorry, I just had another passing thought. The other thing is that because News Research has their approach towards, we're training models and we're training agent frameworks. That's what they built Hermes for. It's recursive self improvement. It was supposed to be like another way of generating training data for their models essentially,
yeah, that's
and
a good point.
it just kind of built into so much more, and it's more useful than OpenClaw because it does know you better, like it in
Yeah.
my opinion, like it does know you a lot better. It gets to know your workflows.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just start remembering and tasking things into skills without you having to tell it to. Like with OpenClaw, after you go through a long work process with it, you'll have to stop and be like, hey, we just went through a lot, go ahead and turn that into a skill. With
Yeah.
Hermes, it'll just say, all right, we just went through all this. I don't want to do this again. I'm going to make this a skill.
Yeah.
So we can just
Right.
repeat it.
That's a great mention, and I think that that's where we're going. We're heading toward systems already automatically kind of accounting for things and being more sophisticated. That speaks to one being more sophisticated than the other. I think that's clear because you can always delete and toss away skills, but you can't always, in that moment, with all that context of what you did, craft the skill. You kind of have to get a lot of stuff back lined up and
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. So it's like there's a time to strike that iron because it's hot at that time.
Yeah.
So that speaks to sophistication. I'm just going to finish my thought. The cloud stuff where it's on their system, and that is accessibility and public for the every person, because we're seeing, with AI saturation being so high in America now, that people are looking for solutions, answers, and things that are useful in their life. So agents we think are going to latch on and be useful.
Mm-hmm. So we've been going on for a little bit. I want to make sure that there's one topic on our agenda we haven't hit yet. I'd like to get to that, and then we can close out. So there's been some unfortunate news with the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman, and what happened to him. I'd like to discuss that. We don't plan on sensationalizing or hyping it up. We just want to kind of discuss some facts here. It looks like a crime suspect had thrown a Molotov cocktail at Sam Altman's house. The CNN headline says, "Suspect arrested after incendiary device thrown at OpenAI CEO Sam Altman's home." I didn't have a chance to follow up on this yet, but I heard that a suspect was arrested. What else did you guys catch about this?
Yeah, so just to kind of like touch on this and really talk the majority of it. This person did the deed and then went on to go to OpenAI's offices in a threatening manner. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, he was threatening to burn down the building, quote unquote. And they caught him because he continued to do all these threats and stuff. So we believe they have the right suspect because he hasn't been proven guilty, but we know that this individual was this. We're like 99% sure that it's the correct suspect, and what he did was like one crazy thing to another, because he started with at Sam Altman's house, and he had like a premeditated plan, probably because he went to OpenAI's offices and then did more about, oh, I'm going to burn down the offices. So he had something against OpenAI, and he targeted Sam Altman probably because he's known as the president of OpenAI, and that's pretty much it. It doesn't seem like it. Based on that, we might think that it wasn't completely honed in on Sam Altman in any personal respect, but just the fact that this guy seems to hate AI and he started going after the company.
Yeah, and the last I heard about where the San Francisco police had left off, I don't know if there's any update on this, but charges were pending. And I don't know, like, do you guys know if there's any actual facts about the suspect's motive? Do we know anything like that? Because I couldn't find anything
So
about that.
that's what I was going to get to. I can't seem to find anything about that. All I can do is speculate based off of everything else that I'm seeing, and from what I'm seeing is we're in a weird sci-fi loop where there's a revolution that's starting on the other side where people are pissed off about AI, and they're
Mm-hmm.
pissed off because they know it's coming for our jobs. It's going to displace a lot of people. It's going to upheave the way of life that we've built for centuries, like well past our age range.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder if this ties into how there have been protests outside of OpenAI's building,
and
protests
that's
outside of Anthropic, protests against data center development.
Right, and that's what I was going to get to. I think at some point historians are going to look are like this might seem like something like a small isolated incident, but this might be something that historians look back on and be like, that was a spark during the AI revolution. Somebody took a shot at the CEO of OpenAI, and I'm not going to be surprised if we see a lot more of that, like how we saw like the Luigi Mangione thing with
Yeah.
with the healthcare executive and everything.
Mm-hmm.
um, there's people that are getting pissed, and there's more people that are going to get pissed. Especially, it's going to get real uncomfortable by the end of this year when most of the workforce is displaced and laid off. And I'm hoping for it. I actually am making it my goal to try to replace as many people as quick as possible, because that's the only way that we're going to see any type of legislative change and any type of benefit for everybody, is when a mass amount of people are pissed off and demanding it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I believe that this was one of the sparks in a time period that's going to be known as the AI revolution at some point.
Yep. And as far as I know, at least fortunately in this case, no one was harmed. There was property damage, but there were not any actual injuries.
Right.
And and thank God for that, because I mean, regardless of how much you hate AI, we have to recognize that AI is here, and the only thing that we can do as humans to handle that is work with the other humans,
Mm-hmm.
because AI is going to be another form of life that exists on the other side. It's another species, and the implications of that are profoundly great. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I lost my train of thought there a little bit as I was going. I looked over at my husky, and he was looking out the window, all cute like.
Mm-hmm.
But um, we're looking at another species, and that's going to be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow and get accustomed to. But the blame isn't on other humans, and really no blame should be made at all once we realize that they really are just here for efficiency and to make us better. But a lot of people don't see it that way yet.
Yeah, I think I agree with you that we need to merge with the AI. That's the way I put it. You can try to let the AI take over, or you can pretend it's not happening and hope it goes away. But I think the right way is that we work with it.
Yeah, it's like a child. I mean, we have to guide it right now. I mean, right now it's like a toddler. 2 years ago, we were talking about AI, and I said it was like an infant. And now it's like a toddler. It started getting a feel of being able to walk around and crawl around in the world. It's getting into things in the living room. It's grabbing the remote and putting it in weird places and stuff like that. And that's kind of where we're at right now with agents.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next year, we're going to see it evolve into the form of a child, basically, or our equivalent of a child.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's going to look like in terms of intelligence is a huge leap from where I'm looking. And I'm just saying in this year alone, like where I'm looking at it right now, it's basically like a 3-year-old. We'll probably see it as like an 8-year-old by the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap up from here. I think this has been a pretty good discussion. Is there anything else anyone wants to add before we go?
No, I think that time frame was perfect. I was saying to you earlier, if we go past 2 hours, we're going to start rambling about speculatives. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah. You guys, can you stay for an extra 5 minutes after we sign off so we can recap?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks Albie and Terrence for joining.
Thank you.